Chapter 56. Jen. Claire. How was marriage prep? Me. Nice people. Good pointers on communication. Dina. Did you tell Michael he has to ask you first before he signs you up for something next time, lol? Me. He's acting a bit weird lately. Claire. How do you mean? Me. I don't know. Maybe he's just busy. Claire. He's probably under pressure with the asbestos crisis from what you've said. Me. Yeah, I think so. Dina. What happened with the HR policy of no dating? Me. My union rep contested it. She's meeting with the chair of governors. Looks hopeful that it will be thrown out. Dina. Maybe Michael's getting cold feet. I laugh out loud at how ludicrous this suggestion is. Michael, who hears through life at 1,000,000 miles an hour, get cold feet about something that was his idea in the first place. Me. Michael doesn't change his mind about things. It gives me some relief, even if Michael is a little short-tempered and preoccupied with work. I know he is looking forward to April the 12th as much as I am. It's some consolation that the week passes quickly and the next marriage preparation session suddenly arrives. We haven't really had much time to practice the communication exercise, so we take it in turns on the journey to share about the week. I'll go first, I offer. I've been working with Liz this week, and it's actually been really helpful and enjoyable. I didn't really appreciate her situation and her experience before. Michael raises an eyebrow but says nothing. I know she hasn't been very reliable at meeting deadlines in the past, I continue, but I think she's come back wanting to do her job well, and we should encourage her when she makes the effort to bring something to the table. Michael's gaze is fixed upon the road, his eyes narrowing a little. He doesn't verbalise his disagreement, but it hangs heavily in the air between us. In the end, I break the silence. Michael? I ask in irritation. Can you at least acknowledge that you were a little curt with Liz at the meeting? I thought we were meant to be communicating about what's important to us, not criticising each other. This is important to me. You see the best in people, Michael says, as if it's a bad thing. But at some point the narrative that everyone has a contribution breaks down, namely, when someone doesn't do their job properly. Things are going to get really awkward if you try to tell me how to manage someone else in my department. I'm not trying to tell you how to manage. Well, it sounds like you want me to give her a medal for showing up and actually having an idea to offer. You need to listen to yourself sometimes, Michael. I cover my face with my hands and press my fingertips to my forehead for a moment. I know you can be kind, generous, and funny, but times like this, you just sound like David Clarke. There's a reason why he has no friends. I've told you before, I don't agree with all of his decisions. I don't like him, and I know he treated you badly. But I do acknowledge that he's a leader, and that he's out there on his own. He's shouldering a lot, and he has to make unpopular choices because it's what he believes is best for the school. It's easier to judge him when you're watching him from a distance. I've seen him up close these last few weeks. I've seen him struggle through an absolute minefield of health and safety issues where many would just quit. He's still there. He may not have friends, but that shows he's willing to make sacrifices to keep Whitlock open. Michael takes a breath and checks over his shoulder before joining the motorway. I try to compose the swirl of guilt and anger which muddles my thoughts. I've had an unshakable conviction that David Clarke is a charmer, someone more obsessed with image than substance, since he taught me 10 years ago when I was a student. He hasn't done much to counter this image since arriving in September as our new executive head. He clearly over-relies on Michael because they came together from his previous school, and he's closer to Michael in age than to the rest of the senior team who have children at university. Have I judged him wrongfully? If I misjudge Liz, there's certainly a possibility that I'm guilty of doing the same with David. But David told me to withdraw my application for the head of department role, which Michael got anyway, and has done everything in his power to split me and Michael up. I'm only surprised he hasn't discovered or invented some of the HR policy which specifies that no staff members can be married in order to prevent us. I imagine the vicar asking the legal question, if anyone knows of any reason why these two cannot be joined in holy matrimony, declare it now. and David Clark bursting through the church doors wearing his usual suit, brandishing papers as evidence for his objection. I get so busy sometimes, I forget to be nice, Michael sighs. I'm not saying that as an excuse, trying to make out that it's okay to be a horrible boss. I don't want to be like that. I've just been under a lot of pressure. Is there anything I can help with? I reach over and take his hand. He squeezes it. Once the porter cabins are set up, no more bussing around and things will settle down, he says with finality. I will set up a time to see Liz next week and I'll apologise for not being more positive. In some ways, it's a satisfying response, but in another sense, it's a classic example of Michael always having the right answer for everything, smoothing over the cracks so that the illusion of perfection is maintained. It doesn't feel like anything I've said has really touched him deep down. That's not a kind of response you can force. There's a lively atmosphere at the marriage prep class and an increasing level of banter now that we're getting to know one another better. Steve gives us a warm-up task of sitting back to back, building something with some blocks, then instructing the other person to build the same structure. Mattie's hooting with laughter so much she can barely hear Benedict's frenetic instructions, and Violet seems more distracted with Michael's strategy of giving me coordinates as if we're playing battleships. When I say distracted, I mean laughing in disbelief, while she tries to instruct James at the same time. Red block to C4, Michael barks. I roll my eyes. Michael, I have no idea what you mean. Just imagine the table is a grid in 5 centimetre blocks, horizontal axis is labelled in letters, the vertical with numbers. Then you'll be fine. I place the red block in a random place on the table. Blue block to H4. I put the blue block parallel to the red one. Now the yellow block needs to be on C4 too, Michael says. I should have worked out a system to indicate depth. On top of the red block? I ask, catching Violet's eye as she fails to suppress another laugh. Yes, Michael replies. Well, why don't you just say that then? I place the yellow block down with slight force. By the time Steve calls us back together, I've made an odd pile of 3 blocks in a rough sort of triangle. Mattie's made a huge tower which wobbles precariously before falling down with a crash, and Violet's made a sort of bridge. A fitting metaphor for our topic this evening, Steve says. When you get married, you are each coming from separate families to create a new family. You both have to help the other to navigate through the unique landscape that is your family. For some of you, your families may look quite similar from the outside, but every family has its quirks, values and behaviours that are acceptable or unacceptable. Your family has shaped who you are. Together, you two will create a bridge, and your marriage will be stronger than if you try to build a new structure with no support on either side. Steve gives us some questions to work through together. I scan them and my stomach queases. If my childhood is a landscape, it's pretty rocky and I don't like going there. Now that I've met Michael's parents, I wonder if Michael's childhood looks like an idyllic beach, but is actually full of quicksand. How would you describe your childhood? I read out, looking at Michael. He reflexively runs his hand through his hair. Good, he says blandly. Nothing out of the ordinary. We went to the sea in the summer, enjoyed Christmas all together. It seems facetious to say, yes, but your dad is impossible to please. If he can't articulate it, then he won't accept it if I say it. What about you? He asks, before your mum left. That feels like a very foreign landscape. I remember food. I smile, hearing again the cheerful noise of the radio and the clatter of pans in the kitchen. Mum cooked Jamaican style, chicken, rice and peas. Dad cooked the classics, shepherd's pie, macaroni cheese. We always ate together. How did your parents relate to one another? Michael reads the next question. I give a dry laugh. My mum was fiercely independent. She had opinions about everything. My dad just let her get on with it, really. He idolised her. Maybe we're more similar to them than you think. Michael squeezes my hand with a grin. There's so much about my parents' dynamic that I just can't adequately express to him. The nuances of a white British guy with a second-generation Jamaican woman whose parents lived in the UK for most of their adult lives, but created their own community so that they continued their cultural traditions. Visiting my grandparents, going to their church had the odd sensation of being somewhere different. I loved them, but I found them hard to understand, especially as we didn't see them very often. I can hardly expect Michael to get something I don't fully grasp myself. If I went out with my dad, people didn't think he was my father, or that we were related because we looked so different, I explain. After Mum left, Dina's mum had to help me with my hair because my dad had no idea. If we have children with hair like mine, you might go through the same thing. That doesn't change anything, Michael says, smoothing the back of my hand with his thumb. Okay, I swallow. Sorry, I've gone off topic. How about you answer the question now? About my parents? He asks and shifts in his seat. Well, maybe it's the opposite. My dad has the opinions and my mum goes along with him. Anne gets steamrollered in the process. The problem is, Michael doesn't seem to see much wrong with this pattern. Do you think that's a good thing? I ask pointedly. I'm sure Mum tells him her views when they're discussing something on their own, Michael answers. But when I was growing up, she would never say anything to contradict him in front of us. That's good for kids, isn't it? A united front. Not if they never see healthy ways of dealing with conflict. I frown. It gives the impression that any disagreements have to be swept under the carpet. Plus, I've only met your parents twice, and both times I've seen your mum get upset because of your dad. If you grew up with that, then maybe it wasn't such a united front as you think. Time's up, Steve calls. Now, you may have heard phrases like, you end up turning into your parents. I don't think that's necessarily true. But what I'd now like you to discuss together is how your ways of relating to each other could mirror your parents' relationship in some ways. Where that is positive, that's great. But where it's a negative pattern, this is a good opportunity to identify it and talk about how you could change. I look at Michael, who checks his phone. He's probably counting down the minutes till the session finishes. Michael? He looks up guiltily and slips the phone back into his pocket. When I tried to talk to you in the car about Liz, you got defensive and shut me down. I take a deep breath. I need to be able to express my opinions when they are different to yours without being afraid that you're going to take it as personally offensive. I don't mind hearing your opinions, he replies, but I won't be like your dad and just say yes, dear, to everything you say. You can't try to control me by heavily suggesting things and then taking offence when I don't follow your advice. He's an expert debater. Sometimes I worry that our arguments will go on forever. I don't want to end up like my mum, I sigh, but I don't want you to end up like your dad either.